How's it going, friends? And welcome to episode 12 of the Cynical Den Podcast. Yeah, so sorry about last week. I realized too late that I didn't have enough time to get the podcast out on time. As for this week, I was too busy playing video games. Not a good enough excuse? Well, tough shit, I guess. You're getting the episode anyway. Quit your whining. I don't mean to be a dick. I'm actually in a good mood. And I attribute the good mood to Zelda coming out because, oh boy, it's pretty good. I'm gonna talk about it later in the episode, but I'll just say right now, I think it's pretty good, and you don't have to worry about nostalgia bias or anything like that, because you're talking to someone whose experience with the Legend of Zelda is limited. I have played the games, but not a whole lot, and I certainly wouldn't, I don't have any of them in, my top 5 games of all time. Anybody who's familiar with it knows that it's mostly comprised of PlayStation and PlayStation 2 games for like kids and teenagers, because that's the shit that I grew up playing. Crash 3 for life. I don't care. You're never gonna convince me otherwise. I know that the reviews on Metacritic, like 98 or something, I don't care. Crash 3, best game ever made. In my humble opinion. Before we start talking about a good game, why don't we talk about something negative? Yeah, that's a good way to start the show. You know me, lifting everybody's spirits. The Nintendo Switch is out, and it's been out here for a couple of days. I didn't buy one, and I'm probably not gonna buy one for a little while. I already own a Wii U, which is what I got Zelda for. And while there are some indie games that do look cool, you're not really gonna be able to sell a system to a PC gamer on indie games. Like, if I own one, then yeah, I'll buy indie games for it, as well as, the Nintendo games I'm obviously excited for, like Mario and Splatoon. But that's not enough to sell me on the system. So you got one really big game that I can play on my Wii U, and not a whole lot else. I'm not getting 1-2 Switch, sorry. That said, I might have considered buying one if the fucking thing didn't cost $470 over here. Gotta love that conversion rate. Fun fact for you non-Australians, $300 does not equal 470 Australian dollars. I know the guys in the EU have it worse. Like £280 for the Nintendo Switch. £280 and $300 are not equivalent. I was also considering buying Halo Wars 2 until I perused the Xbox store on Windows 10 to see that it costs $100. There are very few games I'm willing to pay $100 for, and I'm not spending that much money on a game that I can only play via Microsoft's stupid fucking stores and systems. And I know some people say, whoa, competition is good, and you're right about that, but the issue is that Microsoft's store and Xbox on Windows 10, it's bad. It just sucks ass. Just put the games on Steam and I'll buy them, okay? A follower of mine linked me to an article that was also suggesting that the prices of digital games over here are going to increase, which, that's swell. It's not like it's already expensive as fuck to play games over here. Even though I'm in Australia, the Steam store shows everything in US dollars, but yet it still does weird things like sell games for $70 US. I had to pay $70 US to get Civilization 6, which is obviously going to be higher than what was charged in the US, but then there's the conversion, so I ended up paying a lot more than $70 to play Civilization 6. I don't regret that because I've put 50 hours into that game so far, and they just put Australia in there, and I'm going to play the shit out of that. But it's not exactly fair, is it? You increase the price over what it would normally be in the US, and then you gotta add conversion on that. But even when it comes to Steam games, you still have the sales, and you can go on like G2A and get Steam keys for cheaper. It's still relatively cheap, but the cheapest you're gonna get a console game at launch is $80 here, and most places charge more than that. Some places will charge $100 or $110 for a brand new game, which is absurd. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is that if you want to play video games in Australia, you better be willing to part with a lot of your money because it is an outright expensive hobby here. Price is probably the least of our worries when it comes to games in Australia because thanks to the dumbass decisions by the classification board, we missed out on a lot of good games, and many of their rules threaten games from even releasing here, and it's happened many times. I remember when Mortal Kombat 9 was released, and I was seeing all these videos on the internet and thought, oh man, this game looks awesome, I want to play it. But I couldn't because it got banned because it was too violent and we didn't have an R rating. And then we got the R rating in 2013, but even then, we still had games getting banned. Despite the R rating, there are these really draconian rules that they have that basically mean that you have to alter your game so as not to be immediately banned, because their rules are, oh, if you do this, it's banned automatically. Drug use seems to be a big one that they always pedantically obsess over. I think the rule is basically that you can't have drugs as a positive. You can't have drugs in the game as an interactive that enhances you. Or if it happens, it can't be like an illegal drug or something. And I know this was an issue with Far Cry 3 because you can make like herbal remedies and drugs that enhanced your abilities, and they didn't like that. But again, who cares? It's a video game. It's not real life. We know that that's not how drugs work. The question a rational person would ask is, what is the problem with that? In a thoroughly fictional, interactive game, you can use drugs and they behave in ways that don't make sense. It's a video game. It's not real life. Who cares? The other one I don't really like is stuff to do with sex. I know that Hotline Miami 2 was banned and it's never released here, much to my dismay, because I really liked the first Hotline Miami, but it got banned because of a rape scene in it. And it's never released here at all. And I think the game came out 2 years ago. Again, it's a situation of why would you ban that? It's not real. It's not real. So what does it matter? You gotta love the messed up priorities with the classification board. You know, you can have games where you basically relentlessly slaughter hundreds of people, but if you can use drugs, then it gets banned. You can use a purple dildo and shove it up someone's ass and send them flying into the sky. That's not allowed in the case of Saints Row 4. Now, of course, my logic is it's all okay because it's all fake and it's not real life. And nobody plays a video game and thinks, yeah, you know, I'm just gonna start murdering people. That's never happened, ever. And the only people who say that kind of shit are the idiots on Fox News, who people try to convince me are not still like somehow a threat to gaming and not just gaming, but entertainment in general. A lot of people obsess over social justice warriors, which is fair because they are also causing issues, but there's a lot of stuff that goes unseen when it comes to the typical conservative parent trying to ruin media. There's the Parental Television Association, or the PTA, which is just filled with idiots who will watch TV shows that they don't like and talk about how it corrupts the minds of children. And then they demand that these shows get removed from air instead of, just not showing it to your kids. Take a little bit of responsibility and do some parenting for once. There are websites that will look at movies and they will count. Like, they will actually count the number of times someone says any profanity. I saw like a spreadsheet, I think it was for Age of Ultron, where they counted, there's 5 mentions of damn, 1 mention of pissed, and all I can think is, are you kidding me? And trust me, studios pay attention to these people because that's a demographic that they want to take advantage of. Kids and their parents forced to come with them because you're selling 2 or 3 tickets for the price of 1. I've gone off on a tangent. I was meant to be talking about how gaming is too expensive, and then I ended up just ranting about people trying to ruin everything I like. I suppose the latter is probably a little bit more important because, yeah, it's expensive here, but it's also kind of expensive everywhere, especially in Europe. You guys get totally screwed by conversion. Let's talk about the Nintendo Switch. The reception to this console seems to be mixed. And by mixed, I don't mean, it's alright. I mean, there are some people who really like it and a lot of people who don't like it. I don't think many of the people who bought it don't like it, except for some people who, let's get real, probably weren't looking forward to it anyway. But a lot of the negativity has come from people who don't own it. But again, I think that's fair because when you're talking about buying a console, you need to be looking at the negatives but as well as the positives when it comes to deciding if you want to buy it or not. I will maintain that there are certain things about that console that are really good that I do like, and the thing that I like about it is the hardware. And I know people will be like, what are you talking about? It's not that powerful. But that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the fact that it's quite an impressive technological feat. The console is the tablet. And we've got a tablet that's capable of outputting console quality graphics. That is very impressive. You got something that, when you can dock, is playing a game like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which, while it's not the most technically advanced looking game, it's still a pretty big game with a lot of stuff going on. I know the performance is a bit choppy, but I imagine that has a lot more to do with the game's coding and things like that. Just based on the performance reports we've seen from like Digital Foundry, where it just drops inexplicably. But the fact that it's running on it at all is quite impressive. The way that it's designed is kind of interesting in how it has multiple play modes, and that they've kind of thought about a lot of different things. It's got a bit of flexibility in that regard. I do know that there are some issues with the left Joy-Con desyncing, and those seem to be a major problem. Like, you should not be able to desync a controller by holding it too tightly or blocking off sensors or something. It shouldn't be like that. Which is part of the reason why I would just recommend that you don't ever be an early adopter for a console. Because when you wait, these things get fixed, new models get released, and you get a better deal in the end. But when it comes to, generally speaking, with the hardware for the Switch, I kind of like it. I like the idea of a console that I can take on the go with me. It kind of seems like it seems like what the Wii U should have been from the start, because the Wii U with the tablet control, while that's good if you want to play it in bed or something, which I have done, it's not really flexible enough to be worth it. Whereas with this, because you're playing on the console, on the tablet itself, you're not going to have issues with playing in desync and the fact that you can take it anywhere. While they say it's a home console, it really is a portable, and it's a very impressive portable. I mean, I'm of the same opinion of Digital Foundry. It's a very impressive portable. And for me, that's fine. I don't have any reservations about buying the Switch based on its hardware. I'm just saying that right now. The hardware is not the thing that made me not want to buy it. What made me not want to buy it right now is the fact that when it comes to the software, it's just lacking. Right now it is, at least. There were only about 4 or 5 launch games, and only one of them was a major Nintendo title. The other ones were, like, shovelware, like 1-2 Switch, smaller games like Super Bomberman R and that F-Zero Wipeout-inspired one, which actually looks pretty cool, and I'll probably buy that when I do end up getting the Switch. But that's not a good launch lineup. To be fair, the PS4 and Xbox One didn't have good launch lineups either, but at least the incentive that they had for people to buy them was the third-party games. As a PC game, that was no incentive at all, but with the Switch, there's a little bit more value in having third-party games because there's the added benefit that you can take them on the go. Like, imagine if they had Dishonored 2 on the Switch. That'd be awesome. I could pick it up, buy Dishonored 2, and then play that on the go. That's a selling point for me, and I don't think I'm alone in that. But when you got basically nothing but Zelda, which is the main reason, like, everybody who bought a Switch has bought Zelda. Let's just get real. Every single person who bought a Switch bought Zelda. But as someone who owns a Wii U, I have no incentive to do that. I'll have more incentive when Mario comes out, because that's actually a Switch exclusive. Or even when Splatoon 2 comes out, though I'm not sure I'll hop on that early. I would like to play Splatoon 2, but again, I'll still have to wait like another 6 months for the game that I want to get it for, which is Super Mario Odyssey. But as it stands right now, there's not a lot of incentive. If you don't like Zelda, what options do you have? There is not enough outside of Zelda to make someone go, yeah, I want to pick this up. If they had Zelda and Mario at launch, or even if they had Zelda and Splatoon 2, I probably would have bought the Switch and then bought Legend of Zelda and Splatoon 2 for it. That offers a lot more value for me. But when you've got just the one and I can play it on a system that I already own, then I don't have a lot of incentive to buy the Switch at launch. I'm sure there's more of a proposition value if you don't own a Wii U, but I think a lot of the people who were going to buy Legend of Zelda own a Wii U. The Switch may have been better served launching later down the line when there were more games releasing for it at launch. But I suppose the issue with that is that then Zelda would just be on the Wii U, which definitely wouldn't have helped the Switch. I mean, Zelda is going to help the Switch be successful, or at least more successful than the Wii U, I think, because the Wii U didn't really have any killer apps, and the Switch already has one right out of the gate, which is quite impressive. But they needed something else, and it didn't even need to be necessarily one of their biggest hitters. But if they had, for example, Metroid Prime 4 launch day for the Switch, I would have bought it. If they had Pikmin 4 for the Switch at launch, I probably would have bought it. If they had Smash at launch with the Switch, I definitely would have bought it. An extra game or two go a long way in helping out the launch of a console. But I think what's important is making sure that people know that they're going to have games to play throughout the year. And yeah, games are coming out on it. Because you got Mario, you got Splatoon 2, you got Fire Emblem Warriors, and Xenoblade 2 is supposed to come out this year, though I'm not sure that's going to happen. And then you got all the indie games, but you need a little bit more than that. You need to show people that you have that third-party support, because right now, I don't think you have it. Okay, so great, you got Skyrim coming out on it, but it'll be 6 years old by the time that it releases. You got FIFA, which I don't care about at all. And FIFA releases on everything. It was releasing on the PS2 up until like 2012. FIFA is on everything, so that's not a big selling point. I mean, it's great you're getting support from Sega, and I'm looking forward to if No More Heroes comes out, I'll definitely be keen on that. But, I mean, you need to show people that they can buy the Switch and be content with it. While I'm a PC gamer, and obviously I think PC gaming is the best, and in objective ways it is the best platform, but at least when someone buys a PS4, they can buy it and feel happy knowing that they'll get all of the Sony exclusives, of which there are many, and that they'll be able to get all the third-party games that they want to play. You buy a PS4, you don't have any doubt that the next Battlefield is going to release on it. You don't have any doubt that all of the major titles from every major publisher is going to be released on it. But with the Switch, and it's been this way with Nintendo consoles for probably like over a decade at this stage, you just don't know for sure. You have no idea if you're going to get these games. At start with the Wii U, people thought, oh, maybe we will, but then the third-party support dropped off. Here, they show a list of all the companies that are supposedly supporting it, and yet when we come to launch, there's nothing on it. And we got big games coming out in a few weeks, like Mass Effect Andromeda, which isn't coming to the Switch. Maybe it'll get ported later, but that's too little too late. But you need to have those things on the same day as the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. You need to have simultaneous releases. As it stands right now, I feel like the Switch is off to a better start than the Wii U in that, from a hardware standpoint, I think people kind of like it more. I certainly do. It has a killer app right from the start. It's got a little bit more buzz and people actually know what it is because the marketing's been a little bit better. And there's games coming down the line that look really good. It looks like Nintendo are really taking the path of innovating in their games, which, because we've seen it with Zelda, Splatoon was pretty innovative in my opinion, and Super Mario Odyssey looks like the first proper 3D Mario game since Galaxy, which, I mean, I love 3D Mario games, so that's big for me. And I just hope that they're working on a new Star Fox, a new Metroid, a new Pikmin, a new F-Zero, all of these IPs that are laying dormant, or even new IPs as well, because it worked well for Splatoon, and I guess they got ARMS, which kind of looks fun, but it's not a system seller. I mean, these are all good changes. I don't like the fact that they're charging for online, though. That's a bad change. Don't do that shit. But when it comes to a lot of other things, they're making good changes. But they're still not there yet. They still haven't got what they need to have it be... to have the Switch where it needs to be. Because the third-party support will help it a lot. The indies will certainly help it. And the indie support that they're showing is really good. But it needs more. And as it stands right now, I'm just not getting a Switch until there's a bundle, price drops, or when Mario releases. I don't need it right now. Speaking of Nintendo games, since Zelda released, I've spent a good portion of my time playing it, almost at the expense of today's podcast and the comic, which I still gotta work on. And the reason why I've been playing it so much is because it's really good. Like, really good. I'm about 10 hours in, and I'm pretty sure I'm not even a quarter of the way through, and I think I can attribute that to getting very distracted, because there's a lot of stuff around that you have incentive to look at, because you'll get new loot, you'll get items, foods, and it's fun to fight enemies. The world is quite big. It's a lot bigger than I expected. You definitely need to find a horse to get around. And when you go exploring and you find like shrines and stuff, it's always exciting to find new things in the world. And I usually don't like wilderness open worlds. I'm just saying that right now. There are a few good ones like Red Dead Redemption and Legend of Zelda, but my issue with a lot of them is that they're big but empty. It's part of the reason why I don't really have much interest in Ghost Recon Wildlands, which I'm pretty sure is coming out in like 2 days. Because it just looks like a big empty world with a lot of trees and stuff, but not that much to do in it. Whereas here, it just feels sort of organic, and there are things to see, and when you go exploring, you find things like shrines, enemy camps, and then you find like loot and stuff that you can cook. I love cooking recipes and things like that. I really like the cooking mechanic in this game. The weather system is really dynamic. I really like that. It's usually sunny, but then you get windy, rain, lightning, and a lot of these things will dynamically affect the game world, which is always appreciated. What I like most about the game right now is how well designed it is. It is just a very well designed game, and a lot of that can be attributed to how the mechanics work in the game world. Things work the way that you would expect, and the game does a good job communicating how the mechanics work, and from there you can figure out how to solve problems logically. It's very much like Deus Ex in that regard. You get taught how the game works, and then you start thinking critically without thinking about the mechanics themselves and finding solutions to problems. It's the little details like that. For example, I figured out that I needed to climb a mountain to reach a shrine, but my clothes weren't warm enough, so I got a torch and carried it with me to maintain my body temperature. I found a few outposts along the way, blew them up, and that granted me more fire and temporary reprieve from the cold. I later discovered that I could also craft food that would grant cold resistance. So you get like chili peppers, you cook it with meat, and that will grant you cold resistance for a certain amount of time. I figured that out on my own. The game didn't tell me to do that, and that was very rewarding. I'm not really going to talk about the story. I will say that of the things I've seen in the story, I do quite like it. It's just sort of an interesting story, seeing things unravel, but a lot of the appeal is the gameplay for me. And I'm really enjoying it. After I finish the podcast and get the comic done, I'm probably going to start playing it again. I think it's about time for the Q&A section. Remember, if you have a question you'd like to ask me, feel free to leave it in the comments section and I'll get around to it in the next episode. Today's question is from Astral Assassin, who asks, how does one define how skilled a gamer is? This is a question that will only generate subjective answers, but here's mine, and feel free to take it as factual. Games are easier than they used to be. Checkpoints are extremely forgiving, and lives are a relic of a forgotten time. I don't think anybody can deny that a lot of games are easier now. So much so that I would usually just set a game on hard by default, and even then, it's generally still quite easy. I beat Halo 5 in less than 6 hours on heroic difficulty, so take from that what you will. Even hard difficulty sometimes isn't very hard anymore. A big issue is that a lot of games aren't as mentally stimulating as they used to be. Like, it's very simple. Generally, things like go this way, do this, do that. And not a lot of it is left up to your imagination. They don't let you figure things out. They gotta tell you how everything works. They gotta tell you how to do everything, because you can't go wrong. They don't want things to go too wrong. Skill when it comes to video games differs from genre to genre, because some genres are just outright not that difficult, while other genres are quite complex. It also just depends on what genres you're good at. I'm not particularly good at fighting games, but platformers and stealth games are my shit, and I'm usually at the top of the leaderboard in shooters as well. To me, a gamer with good skill is somebody who is reasonably competent at most games. If you're awesome at fighters but suck at playing anything else, your skills are pretty narrow, and that's not really a lot to be proud of or bragging rights or anything like that. I think it's important that you're actually good at playing a variety of different games. I don't really care about MLG, and I'm not especially impressed by somebody who's good at Call of Duty. If you're good at one game, a game that's not very hard either, is not really a mark of skill. I can beat you in Call of Duty. You can't beat me in anything else though, can you? So, wow, good job. I don't really like these arrogant professional gamers who think they're like really hot shit because they're good at 1 or 2 games. Nobody gives a shit, mate. Honestly, nobody gives a fuck. I don't think levels are a mark of skill either. Like, it just means you played longer than everybody else. Like, it's not really bragging rights. Oh, you're level 27. I'm prestige 9. The guy hasn't played as much as you. That doesn't mean anything. Things like time to beat a game, KD ratio, points per minute, matches won, these are good determinants of skill because these are based on the way that you play, how much you contributed to your team, how quick you are. Completion is also kind of a good one because it shows you got persistence. I'm not really a completionist. I do appreciate the effort that it takes to get a platinum, and sometimes it does take a challenge because there's certain things that you need to achieve as opposed to just simply leveling up, which is usually a case of play more, kill more things. You know, it's not really that impressive to me. Hope that answers your question. That does it for me. Thanks for watching this 2 days late episode of the Cynical Den Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, if you liked what you saw here and you want to see more from Crude Penguin, feel free to go to crudepenguin.com and follow Crude Penguin on Twitter and Facebook. All the links are available in the description. I'll get that comic out. I'll try and get that comic out. I keep saying that because that's my mental way of trying to get me motivated to get it done. Once it gets started, the comic gets done pretty quick, but it's about getting started on some of this work that's the tricky part. It's part of the reason why this podcast was late. But enough rambling from me. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode of the Cynical Den Podcast.